the Oscars, where I think there were like 10 different attendees who wore little pins to show their support for a ceasefire. And then the winner for as director of Best Foreign Picture, Zone of Interest, which is about one of the heads of Auschwitz living right next door with his family in this sort of beautiful, idyllic space right next door to the extermination camp Auschwitz, and how regular life can just sort of continue when people are perpetrating these atrocities and a genocide. So I'm sure everybody saw this, but we will just remind you that when the director, Jonathan Glazer, who is Jewish, got up to say his speech, this is how it went.
Thank you to the Academy for this honor, and to our partners A24, Film for Access, and the Polish Film Institute, to the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum for their trust and guidance, to my producers, actors, collaborators. All our choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present, not to say, look what they did then, rather look what we do now. Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel, or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all are victims of this dehumanization. How do we resist? Alexandra Bistron Kaladziejczak, the girl who glows in the film as she did in life, chose to. I dedicate this to her memory and her resistance. Thank you.
So pretty mild, I mean beautiful, but mild speech about Israel.
He even threw in the October 7th attacks on Israel, which, you know, which that there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying he shouldn't have done that, but like he
ignored it.
He softened his impact as much as possible for the audience in a way to try to reach everybody, even if you're sympathetic to people in Israel harmed by this, which you should be, you know.
Right.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be.
No, yeah, absolutely. These are just a few of the crazy, unhinged responses. Israel is not hijacking Judaism or the Holocaust by defending itself against genocidal terrorists. Glazer's comments at the Oscars are both factually incorrect and morally reprehensible. They minimize the Shoah and excuse terrorism of the most heinous kind. Israel's war room. Disgusting Oscar speech from Jonathan Glazer blaming Israel, the victim, for the October 7th massacre in the 1940s. The dehumanization of Jews led to the systematic mass murder of 6 million. In 2023, that same Jew hatred led to the mass murder of 1,200. It would have been many more if the Jewish state couldn't or didn't fight back. Not to be outdone, here comes Alan Dershowitz, who I don't know why this pedophile rapist is still not behind bars. Thankfully, he renounces his Judaism. Didn't do that. Good riddance to bad garbage. And the useful idiots in the audience applaud his bigotry. Fan favorite Jonathan Bidhoritz. Jonathan Glazer, you can go fuck yourself and stuff your Oscar up your ass. Has a little more. By saying he refutes his Jewishness on the biggest stage in the world 5 months after the attack on Israel, Jonathan Glazer has instantly made himself into one of Judaism's historical villains, right up there with Hitler. And Batya Ungar Sargon, I simply cannot fathom the moral rot in someone's soul that leads them to win an award for a movie about the Holocaust, and with the platform given to them to accept that award by saying, "We stand here as men who refute their Jewishness." I mean, that is not what they said.
He did not refute his Jewishness. He said, basically, don't do this in my name.
I mean, I do wish it had been, I mean, here, I do wish it had been, I do wish it had been more, 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 I worded differently because I don't think refute is actually the proper word, but I know that's going to be like, of course, everybody understood exactly what he was saying. The participial phrase could have been closer to if he had said, I denounce the
actions of my country,
the hijacking of my Jewishness and the Holocaust. But that's what he was saying. He was not saying, I renounce my Jewishness. He said, don't use me as a human shield or the Holocaust as a shield for the atrocities that you are perpetrating. It was very clear.
And especially given the movie that he just got an award for, it was the most apt speech he could have given. It was why he got the award.
I mean, yeah, he is Jewish. He made a movie about the horrors of the Holocaust. He mentions that, or thanks the collaborative efforts of the Auschwitz Museum. He's not taking the Holocaust or the decimation of 6 million Jews lightly. That was the whole point.
Wasn't he even partially funded by the Jewish Museum, the Holocaust Museum? I think there's a connection there on some level.
But I know he thanked them, so at least they were advising on it in some regard. But so Batya is a journalist. So the fact that she fully misquotes him in print, doesn't just like pretend she doesn't understand, but writes down, I refute my Jewishness and puts a period there.
Yeah, right.
That's
journalist malpractice. That is dishonest as hell. Like we know a lot of the Israel propaganda is there's a lot of it. It's a lot of bullshit. They've been caught in a lot of outright lies. But when are they going to learn? You make your argument without the lie. If you can't make your argument without the lie, you are like, tell me your lie. Lie to me 5 times. The 6th time you tell something to me, I'm going to think it's a lie. And this is another example of it.
I mean, people talking about it online, talking about didn't even mention October 7th when it's right there. I mean, just what you're saying, like the lies will continue even with the truth staring us in the face. And so then, is it that we cannot ever criticize anything Israel does? Is that where we cut that? That's just it. You cannot criticize Israel because they have successfully convinced Zionists that anybody. I mean, I of course wrote some things, and I got DMs about how DMs, and actually they weren't even all shamed enough to not write it out on Maine, telling me that they'll rape me, behead me, that I'm capo, all of that kind of stuff. It is so disgusting. Even a Jewish filmmaker who spends years of his life making a film about the horrors of the Holocaust is on par with Hitler as one of the biggest villains against Jews because he said, don't use my Jewishness to justify the genocide that you are perpetrating. It is honestly, shocking isn't the right word. It stoops to a new level every day.
It does, but I mean, there's some hope in the fact that this reached a lot of people, and this discussion reached even more people. And there's no avoiding the fact that the public has been awoken to what is actually happening there to a level that can't be put back. And the more this goes on, the more tragic it is for Gazans, which is awful. The only silver lining in it is it is waking people up to how truly our government does not work for us. They are not representing our interests. It's not making Israel safer. It's not making us safer. Why are they still protecting this country? Why are we shielding them at this point? It's just corporate capture. I mean, and corporate capture. I mean, it's AIPAC, it's J Street. It's the fact that Israel's going to spend like was it $100 million they pledged already to anyone who supports Gaza?
Yeah, who's pro-Palestine, who wants by the way, a ceasefire. Like, when has it ever been prohibited or looked down upon to say, can we stop war? Like, at least Democrats used to pretend that was the side they were on. And again, as we were saying, and I mean, all of these issues are intersectional, but a majority of the country wants a ceasefire. Majority of Jews want a ceasefire. So, none of this is going the way for the politicians, but that doesn't matter because they don't even pretend to be, working on any sort of representative democracy. They only represent their lobbyists. But yeah, whether the general public, Jewish people, Muslims, Catholics, Protestants, white evangelical, non-affiliated, majority of Americans favor a ceasefire, as does a majority of the world. Instead of ever listening to anything that their people want, the new effort, which is, again, pushed by AIPAC, is TikTok needs to be sold or banned before the 2024 elections, because them kids are getting too much real information.
Well, I mean, Nancy Pelosi said it best, I think.
This is not an attempt to ban TikTok. It's an attempt to make TikTok better. Tic-tac-toe. A winner. A winner.
That sums it up.
I'll have what she's drinking. She's just a disaster. Yeah, but so basically this came out, it was I think a conference call amongst ADL board members. And this is
the president of the ADL.
Right. Agree.
The issue in the United States of support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem.
We have a TikTok problem. And again, the problem is that for a long time, Israel and AIPAC and ADL and the Canary Mission and all of these highly influential organizations have been able to, guide the narrative and make Israel the perpetual victim.
Right, and they've done that by owning the politicians, essentially, with their money.
That's right.
The media, we've seen that CNN had to run stories through the IDF before they could air them.
Right.
If they had coverage of Israel.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Now that we've got alternative sources that are getting the word out, of course, we're seeing suddenly they're trying to clamp down on them. And that's what this is about. This is TikTok, which is the biggest place. I mean, probably Twitter is right up there.
Yeah.
But that's where people are sharing. That's where you're hitting the people most likely to change their minds. People on TikTok are young. They're seeing these videos of Palestinian people killed. They're seeing these conversations between Israelis and Palestinian people, and they're basically disgusted and on the side of Palestine. And so that's what this is all about. And
this was what was this? After the October 7th attacks by Hamas against Israel, the Anti-Defamation League recorded a 10-time increase in anti-Semitic incidents on U.S. college campuses. Okay, this is from that Time article that says that TikTok has to be banned, but that's a lie, because the increase, or they changed the parameter, the metric of how they were calling something anti-Semitic. So calling for a ceasefire or being pro-Palestine is considered, in their estimation, to be anti-Semitic. This coincided with the surge of pro-Palestinian content on TikTok. At its peak, 98.6% of U.S. views on TikTok of content related to the Israel-Hamas war carried a pro-Palestinian hashtag. So it has the people who rely on Israel being, our only democracy, our only friends in the Middle East, which, is all about access, of course, to resources in the Middle East. So again, capitalism has nothing to do with, of course, real anti-Semitism or real support for religious freedom or real support for democracy. But those people are freaking out. So that's why the TikTok thing is happening. This was platform usage and anti-Semitic, anti-Israel views, and again, they're going to blame it all on TikTok, but they are conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Yeah.
6 months ago or so, right around October 7th, actually. I mean, like maybe a month past it. So 4 months ago.
Right.
The ADL literally changed their declaration of what constitutes a hate crime. And so saying from the river to the sea, their own website, when they would define terms and they would say, is this anti-Semitic or not? It wasn't anti-Semitic at the time.
Right.
And in fact, it's in the origin of it is the Israeli charter. So it's hypocritical at best, because from the river to the sea is just, it's born out of saying Palestine should have the same liberation as Israel has.
Right. This actually participate in a real democracy. So I don't think it's going to pass the Senate. I think that's the feeling, is that it will not pass the Senate. It did pass the House, this bill, and of course Joe Biden said that he would vote for it. But part of the contention also, they keep doing this Red Scare of the China fear-mongering, is that, well, it's a data mining service, and that's how they're framing it. And, China has all of our data and all of our we have to protect young people. Of course, they're not going to talk about Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. They're only going to talk about TikTok, because that's the one that most young people.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to, on Facebook, you're going to poll people and it's going to be Facebook is people susceptible to propaganda. It's older folks in general. It's just, it's not heated young people pissing off their whole family. People are safe. Like, I'm just going to post my cat pictures on Facebook or whatever, And
Zuckerberg is also, suppressing pro-Palestinian voices on Facebook. So, they're very happy with that, the way that works, because they have much more of a cozy relationship with the people in power at Facebook and at Twitter, where, remember in 2016, they suppressed 40%, I think, of tweets that had the hashtag DNC leaks.
They did. And they put out that expose on Russian influence. And it turns out, when they actually looked at the reports, my literal Twitter account, had more views than the entirety of all the Russian propaganda accounts.
Yeah.
So like me, I had more influence personally.
We call this a backdoor brag.
I mean, I think it's accurate. It's accurate. So vote for those socialist guys we had on earlier, and maybe we'll win this thing.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Maybe we'll do this.
We can do it. I think Russia, they said, spent like $100,000 on the gay Bernie ads or whatever. Like, it was so ridiculous. Remember?
Yeah,
the Putin and the Putin Trump ads.
The Russian tweets that were promoted were like not even that balanced against Democrats. Like they were promoting Joanne Reed's tweets more than like a lot of people anti-Democrat. So how is that? I mean, maybe they're stirring discontent, but it was nonsense.
It was nonsense. But on the data mining thing, part of back in 2020, remember, or maybe even 2019, 2018, Trump was trying to ban TikTok. And then they sold, I think they had to sell like 20% of it, and they sold it to Oracle. So actually all US data is with Oracle in their servers in, I think, Texas.
And the
Oracle
asterisk,
Well,
the asterisk to all of this stuff with the data, it's the lamest argument ever, because a foreign country can buy all that data. There are no restrictions on buying that data.
Yeah.
So like the idea that, they're going to know your favorite viewing habits. Well, they can buy your favorite viewing habits. They could track your GPS. They could buy your GPS movements.
I mean, it's all
Which is-
so ridiculous. It's so clearly an effort to continue to control the narrative, which has completely escaped them. I don't think they're ever getting, it's like, you can't squeeze toothpaste back in the tube. But Oracle also has huge ties to the CIA, as do all of these different
Oracle.
tech companies. Yeah.
Well, that's the announcement, but here,
Yeah.
this was an article. Oracle's coziness with government goes back to its founding, firm's growth sustained as niche, established with federal state agencies. And if you scroll down, the CIA was not just Oracle's first customer. Founded in 1977, the firm's name came from a CIA project codenamed Oracle, like literally codenamed Oracle.
They're like screaming it from the rafters. Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a conspiracy theorist, though, on our part, right?
Amazing. But so to that point, just going back to the controlling the narrative, the Gray Zone had a really good piece recently talking about another person who could be our worst of the week every week, Frank Luntz. And
I thought sure you were going to say Bill Maher.
we got him.
We got
too.
Bill Maher queued up,
all the big hits, yeah. But so in this article, the Gray Zone has obtained slides from a confidential Israel lobby presentation crafted by Republican pollster Frank Luntz. They contain talking points for politicians and influencers seeking to justify Israel's rampage in Gaza. Ready for this? He polled. In one focus group, here come my readers, Luntz asked participants to state which alleged act by Hamas on October 7th bothers you more. After being presented with a laundry list of alleged atrocities, a majority declared that they were most upset by the claim that Hamas raped civilians, 19% more than those who expressed outrage that Hamas supposedly exterminated civilians, which is why this rape propaganda continues.
They're fighting so hard on that issue.
It's the only thing, which, even if it had happened, does not justify genocide, but there is absolutely no forensic proof. Even the UN person who finally was brought in basically just talked, as we all know, to Israeli propagandists and heard what they had to say. There has not been a single victim who has come forward. There, with all of the video footage that's out there,
right.
And we're seeing what's
they are
happening.
all secondhand reports by people, which doesn't mean they're not accurate. They could be completely valid secondhand reports in rape situations. That happens.
Right.
That 100% happens.
Right.
But if there was a systemic plan to do these rapes,
as a weapon of war,
yeah, there would be evidence, and there is not evidence of that at all.
I mean, yeah. So just, a couple more that we hear all the time. Israelis have a right to defend themselves. That's what you should always say. You can never apparently talk about Palestinians having a right to defend themselves as an occupied territory, even though, as a reminder, the UN does, oh my God, it's so small. I can barely see it even with my readers, I am sure. Hamas is not a terrorist group, because any group opposing its occupation and apartheid is a political movement and a force of resistance. Resistance to occupation is recognized under international law, even if you don't agree with their tactics. But the point is, it doesn't matter the tactics. If it's a peaceful protest, the IDF was shooting people at their knees. There was a huge upsurge in children having amputations with the peaceful March of Return in 2014. So, and then the talk about the hostages again, and yes, innocent people taken hostage, that's a war crime, should not be happening. But there just does need to be a reminder that the number of Palestinian hostages, which they call administrative detainees, has risen to 3,484. And that's just since October 7th. That joins the, I think, almost 5,000 people who were already there. Many of them are children. They're political dissidents. They are people who, you throw a rock, okay, or you're accused of throwing a rock. You don't get a trial. It's all military tribunals.
And I'm not defending Hamas here, but if you kidnap 100 people in my family, strategically, I may think nothing else has worked. Why don't I kidnap one of your people? I mean, I'm just being real here. Like, this is
Yeah.
if you compare the levels of war crimes across the board,
There's actually no comparison. Yeah.
there isn't. But that's why specifically the UN Charter understands that people with no power are going to act
They have
dangerously,
a right to
and
fight
they
their
have a
occupier.
literal right to. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many people, like, I can't even imagine, like, somebody, just for the sublime to the ridiculous, somebody gave a kid a hit who actually reached on error yesterday, and I was like, that's not fair. You're doing that to my kid. Now their stats are going to be different. Imagine people shooting, killing, maiming, raping. I mean, children who are being raped by the IDF. There is actual, like, I don't even know how anybody is not absolutely consumed with hatred to see what is being done to their own families as they are being forced to document their own massacres because Israel's killed all of the journalists who were there, and the world still isn't taking action except for the Houthis. Ansarallah.
And well, I don't want to let Dana Bash off the hook. Let's show that little clip of her real quick, because this is how I mean, CNN is starting to do some honest reporting occasionally, but just watch it.
15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
Well, Dana, I
Palestinian
think
women.
we're not.
Which is a lie anyway, but not what you're supposed to say there. Like, it's, it is.
Yeah. Oh, we dropped a nuclear bomb and killed 40,000 people.
Well, did you rape them?
But we didn't rape. We did not rape. That's the important part.
There you go. That's the important part, as Frank Luntz pointed out.
And
All right. Yeah.
Well, we're not the good guys here. We know this, but I mean, I don't know how many people saw this. Probably a lot of people, but this is literally playing over the loudspeaker to our U.S. soldiers as they head to war.
Amazing.
That's
Playing their part.
You know, it's from Star Wars, the Imperial March. It's the bad guys' anthem. Here. This is our new segment where we're going to highlight words of wisdom, or just anybody saying something we should agree with or listen to.
Just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort. Totally false propaganda.
I mean, I think
Eating babies for breakfast. That's so familiar.
Yeah. I mean, they did that with Saddam Hussein, killing the babies in incubators, which, by the way, is happening right now because of Israel. They did that, was it with Gaddafi, where they said they were giving their soldiers Viagra so that they could rape? Was that, I think it was Gaddafi. Yeah, I mean, this has just been going on, and we're hearing John Stockwell talk about Operation Mockingbird.
Planting.
They
planted all these stories specifically
to
target the emotional reaction, because it's really hard to undo something emotional like that. Like it's psychological manipulation.
Yep. It's always used to justify our own
Atrocities. Exactly.